Thank you so much. Thank you, Nelson, for that very kind introduction. And thank all of you for being here and for doing the hard work of building a party in these very difficult, politically repressive times that we've just been through. But the good news is that while we've been ahead of the curve for about 20 years or so, as long as we've been around, the curve is catching up to us in a big way, and it's a whole new world. And I want to strongly agree with the speakers before me that there really is a lot that's bubbling up, that's really erupting up right now by way of democracy and justice and really the whole agenda of what we've been working on as a party. In so many ways, we are the political expression of that movement for democracy and justice that's alive and well out there in the streets right now. So, in fact, this has been the history of how we've made progress socially and politically over the past century and more, in fact. It's always taken a social movement and it's taken an independent political party aside from the mainstream, which tends to be, the force of resistance against change, the force for the status quo. It's always taken the independent politics together with the social movement that really made change. So, in a nutshell, we are in this incredibly exciting moment right now where democracy and justice are breaking out from the democracy revolutions in the Middle East to the uprisings in Wisconsin and the Occupy protests really all across the nation. And at the same time that democracy is breaking out, people are breaking away from the establishment political parties. And we see this in polls and party registrations and just talking to people out on the streets, that people have really had enough. And you put it all together, it means that this election really has the potential to be a very powerful tipping point to take back this promise of our democracy and the peaceful, just, green future that really is within our reach, and it is within our reach now. We badly need this tipping point, as we in this room all know, because in so many ways we've hit the breaking point. We've hit the breaking point for people, for the planet, for our economy, and our democracy. So we need to get it turned around now, and a lot of people realize that that's very much the case. We didn't get here to this breaking point by coincidence or randomly. We've got here with the direction of the two political parties of the establishment, really two wings of the political establishment, Democrats and Republicans, which have all delivered crisis after crisis. And I think it was Howard who was saying that in so many ways, this president, this Democratic president, Barack Obama, has basically embraced the policies of George Bush, and in many instances, he's gone way beyond George Bush and gotten away with what George Bush never could have gotten away with. So I'm just going to run through the list, the litany, because I find it really helpful to have it on hand when our friends and colleagues just start repeating the political mantra that's been drummed into us for the past, 4 years, but a long time before that. This mantra that we must silence ourselves, we must vote for the lesser evil because it's lesser evil. But in so many ways, they have really, it's hard to tell which one is the lesser evil right now, even if that's the way you wanted to vote. So here's the facts, and the facts are persuasive, because many people don't have time to pay attention and ferret them out, because big media certainly isn't going to be laying them out, in a way that's clear or easy to find. So going down the list, the massive bailouts for Wall Street, it was $700 billion under George Bush, but it's been trillions under Barack Obama. The layoffs for Main Street and declining wages for workers, which continue very much due to the free trade agreements, which President Obama has just extended. The attacks on Medicare and Social Security and the epidemic of home foreclosures, all of that continues under the Democratic president very much. Those crises have been absolutely unabated and unmitigated. The expanding wars for oil, as was mentioned earlier, the withdrawal from Iraq took place, as you probably know, because Barack Obama was unable to negotiate extended immunity, criminal immunity for our soldiers there. That's why he had to pull the troops out. He tried to extend a longer period of stay and was unable to do that. So essentially this president withdrew at George Bush's predetermined date of withdrawal. So troops came out, none to the credit of Barack Obama, and in the meantime he surged the troops into Afghanistan, where we still have twice as many as ever existed under George Bush. His first act, one of his first official foreign policy acts, was to intensify the bombing in Pakistan and then to spread the bombing through the drone wars into Yemen and Somalia, and then to station armed troops in Central Africa for the first time in recent history, certainly. We now have armed troops in Central Africa now that we know that there are oil supplies there. This is another very ominous development. So this has hardly been the peace president. In the area of education, this president, like George Bush, they continue to privatize our K-12 schools and to inflict insurmountable debt onto an entire generation of students, basically turning college students into indentured servants with his college debt crisis. And we saw President Obama stand up and declare himself a hero for staying the course of this horrendous debt crisis, saying he's going to keep it from getting worse. Isn't that a great thing? I mean, when it's absolutely, it's a devastating crisis right now. It's not good enough to keep a deadly crisis from getting worse. I mean, there's no doubt about that in the minds of students. That's not good enough. Thank you, Mr. President. And Romney stood up and said, me too. And that's about how much difference there is between them. That and Romney care versus Obamacare. You know, find the daylight between them. On civil liberties, there's another one where Obama has really outstripped George Bush by basically codifying, writing into legal code the abuses of George Bush and establishing them as legitimate presidential powers for all future presidents as well. So if you're not quaking in your boots, you should be, as should all of our Democratic and other so-called progressive friends, and even many, you know, who count themselves as Republicans and Libertarians. We have an awful lot in common here, and I have to say, out on the campaign trail, I find people willing to absolutely forget all of our differences, because what unites us around the issues of our democracy and our civil liberties and war and corporate takeover is pretty powerful. So in the area of civil liberties, as you probably know, Barack Obama has basically legitimized the indefinite detentions of U.S. citizens now as well, the assassination of U.S. citizens, which even George Bush didn't try to do, and the criminalization of protest has been taken much further than George Bush ever did. With H.R. 347, are people familiar with that? Criminalization of protest, which basically means you might be at a demonstration, and essentially if somebody shows up who has a national security agent, like a political candidate, for example, if a national security agent is there on site, then the protest automatically becomes a site of special national security, and you are a felon for being there, even if you don't know it. So a simple act of demonstrating, protesting, or committing an act of civil disobedience becomes basically a basis for up to 10 years in jail. So it's a real threat to our, you know, not just our future, it's happening right now. And we know that these laws and these homeland security programs and the Patriot Act and the incredible funding that has poured into our local police forces to militarize them and equip them with, with the plans, the mindset, and the gear of the military is very dangerous. It's happening right now. We know there's an active spy effort going on for the Occupy movement, which just, was recently revealed in some FOIA reports. But we know from long before that these, kind of our own police state apparatus has been used against the peace movement, against Greens, against anti-war and environmental groups and so on. So anybody who's not quaking in their boots should be, and it's another really important way to wake up our colleagues out there in the progressive world about where their politics needs to be. Just a couple others to mention in this laundry list here. On our the prison industrial complex and the racist war on drugs continues apace under Barack Obama. In many ways it's been extended because Barack Obama has declared war on medical marijuana as well, despite his promises to the contrary when he was the candidate. And it's been really a shame to see how these medical clinics essentially are under attack, as are patients as well, who actually have prescriptions for legitimate and important uses of marijuana for a whole variety of medical illnesses. And then finally, of course, in the area of the environment, Barack Obama has been the drill, baby, drill president, embracing all the horrendous policies of George Bush, everything from nuclear power plants. How many under George Bush? 0 were built. 4 are being built now under Barack Obama. Mountaintop removal, increased offshore drilling, the opening up of new fragile offshore lands, the Arctic, national parks, and national forests and so on, which are all being opened up to fossil fuel exploration. It's really a travesty. And, you know, the crowning achievement, I guess, of the Obama administration in this regard was in Durban. As people here are probably well aware, at the climate accords, he basically scuttled an international agreement so that there would be none before 2020. And for anyone who's paying attention to the climate science, it's well established that 2020 is too late. The goose is cooked by then. And we will have hit tipping points if we're not already there. We certainly will be by 2020, and it will be just about impossible to retrench at that point. And for those who know anything about climate science, it's not like you warm a couple of degrees. It's now predicted to be 10 degrees over the course of this century. It's not like you warm and then it stops. You warm and then you basically trigger accelerating warming. So there's no end to where this will go, and it will rapidly become incompatible with society and civilization as we know it, for all sorts of reasons, including droughts, which have already hit us, and rising prices of food, the destabilization of agriculture, storms, and of course melting ice sheets. And we, you know, the signs that Greenland is in the process of beginning its breakup are quite sobering and motivate one to intensive action right now. This is not something that can wait even for 4 more years.